if you take a piece of the earth, you cut off a piece of the ground and you bring it to Eretz Israel, um, also we'd say that you would become contaminated because of the fact that in that piece of ground, there might be a piece of the size of barley, of a bone of a dead person. We said that the non-Jewish world outside of Israel, they weren't careful in burying people in a proper cemetery. They might just bury the person wherever the person passed away. They didn't mark the grave so properly. They weren't so careful. Not like the Jewish community were extremely sensitive because Kohanim, and not only Kohanim, even a non-Kohen can't become a Kohen can't is not allowed to make himself contaminated from a corpse, and a non-Kohen has to be aware if they come in contact. They have no problem coming in contact, but if they come in contact with a dead body, now they become tameh, and then the whole process, and they feel they can't go into the Beit Hamikdash if they're in the state of tumah. So there's a lot of ramifications for both the Kohen and the non-Kohen when it comes to contamination and corpses. And therefore, the Jewish community in Israel was very careful about where they placed the dead body, how they marked the dead body. And therefore, the rabbis made a decree outside of Israel. If you enter into outside of Israel, you will be considered as if you came in contact with a dead body, because maybe there's a piece of bone that might have been dug up, plowed. The field might have been plowed. There might have been a body there, and you might have come in contact with that with a dead bone of a dead body. So, but the Gemara said that there was a couple of stages in the decree. Originally, the rabbis first said that if you would go ahead and take a clod of earth, or I would say the same thing, if you would walk in the land of the non-Jew outside of Israel, or someone would take a clod of earth from that land and bring it to the land of Israel, someone comes in contact with it, you would become contaminated. You would be. Originally, they said that if truma touched that piece of earth, the truma, you would not burn it, but you would not be able to eat it. It would be suspended. And then 80 years before the destruction, they added and they said, actually, you'll have to burn the truma. We consider it like a definite contamination. You have to burn the truma that comes in contact with that clod of earth. And the Gemara yesterday was questioning that statement, because Vakati, we said, B'usha Gaza. We know this was this matter of when they decreed that if a clod of earth from outside of Israel enters Israel and touches truma, that the truma will become contaminated and you have to burn the truma out of concern. Maybe there's a bone of a dead person in there, that clod of earth. That enactment was made post that Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, not before the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. That's going to be the Gemara's question. The Gemara says, Vakati b'usha gaza. When they went Usha, that's when they made the Gezerah, not earlier, not before the destruction. Ditnan, Hashisha Svekot Sorfin et Truma. When there's six situations of doubt whether there is a contamination or not, you actually will burn truma, even though it's a doubt. The rabbis were very strict. We said yesterday, Safek Beta Pras. We spoke about a field that there was a dead. According to the way Rashi learns, there was a dead body in the field, and we don't know where it was, where that body is in the field. It was lost in some. We know it's in some place of the field, and if somebody walked into that field with truma, we say that you're going to go ahead and we're going to be concerned that maybe you walked over the body and you will have to go ahead and burn the truma as a result of that. Al safek, not number two. Al safek al fahaba meritam. So here we see this is in Usha. Now they're saying that you burn the truma if you have a clod of earth from outside of Israel that enters Israel. And if it touches truma, then you have to burn the truma. So it only was post the Beit HaMikdash did they make such a gzera, but not before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. The Gemara continues. Asfek bigdei Amaretz. Amaretz is an uneducated Jew who was not so careful about the laws, not so knowledgeable, not so careful about the laws of purity. And if his garment, his clothing, there's a concern that maybe his wife sat on the clothing while she was a nidah. And if she would sit on the clothing when she's a nidah, that would make the clothing a tumah. It would actually be an ava tumah. And they said if truma touched the clothing of the wife, clothing that came from the Amaretz, meaning his clothing, we're afraid that his clothing became contaminated through his wife sitting on the clothing, and therefore the clothing would then contaminate the truma, and we say, even though it's a safek, the doubt, we say you have to burn the truma that came in contact with that. Number 4, Vasvek kelim hanimsaim. Let's say you found the utensil there was a utensil that was left in the market, in the street. You don't know. If someone left a metal bottle in the street, a glass bottle in the street. You don't know whether this metal bottle is tameh or not. Was it kept in purity? Did it come in contact with something that would contaminate the metal bottle? So what do we say? They say we got to consider it as if it's definitely tameh, and you have to burn. If this bottle comes in contact with truma, you would have to burn the truma. Number 5, vasvak harukin. Rukin is the saliva, the spit. If someone who's a zav, someone who has an unusual discharge, we say he's tameh, right? There's a certain type of discharge that will make a person tameh, and both the normal discharge and the unusual discharge will make a person tameh, but there are different laws regarding a zav, the unusual discharge. And the law is not only is the person tameh, good morning, Emmanuel, she has an unusual discharge, the saliva that comes out of his mouth has the ability to contaminate things. His saliva, his urine, his liquids that come out from his body. So the saliva, if you find saliva and you don't know this saliva, did it come from a zav or even a zava? A zava is also a woman who has her period at an unusual time. If you don't know where the saliva came from, so the rabbi said, we're going to make a decree. If this saliva came in contact with truma, we're going to burn the truma. We're going to be out of concern that maybe it was saliva from a zav or a zavad, which has the power to contaminate. And number 6, asvak be mei ragle adam shekeneged mei ragle behema. There was urine. Now, urine of an animal does not contaminate truma. But urine of a person who was a zav, if it came from a man who has this unusual discharge, or the woman who has her period at the unusual time, the saliva, the urine will contaminate. So if there was a safek, there was urine, we don't know. If this, the way Rashi learns, we don't know we don't know if we're going to see if it's urine from a human being or an animal. It's right next to urine of an animal. So we have right in front of us urine that's clearly from an animal urine. And we have another urine that's not, but we don't know if it's animal urine or if it's a human's urine. So there's multiple doubts. Maybe it's not even from a human. And even if it's from a human, maybe the urine is not from someone who had an unusual discharge or what lady had unusual period. Nevertheless, we're going to be so strict to say that if came in contact with truma, you will go ahead and burn the truma. Alvade magan svik tumatan. When you know that this urine touched truma, even though we don't know if this urine was actually was urine that's contaminated or not. We don't even know if it's urine of a person. So finish the truma, you burn the truma. But if there is a question whether this urine itself actually touched the truma, then you will not you will not you will not burn the truma. So finish the truma. Then it would be tahar. It would be tahar. It would be pure the truma if you don't know that this urine that's in question actually touched the truma or not. The only time we say you have to burn the truma is when we know that this urine that's in question actually touched the truma. Rabbi Yossi says the following. Omer. He says, Al af asvak magaon. Even if in the case where we don't even know if this urine touched the truma, but if the safek happened in bishut yachid, if this happened in private property in a private area, so finish the truma, we would burn the truma. Meaning to say, we have a law of a sota. What's a sota? Sota is a married woman who her husband is nervous about her. He sees she's getting social with men. She sees maybe she's getting social with a specific man. And he tells her, I don't want you to be alone. Don't be alone with this man. And she does a sin. What's a sin? She goes along with a man. A married woman is not allowed to be alone with another man, even if she does nothing. Even if she doesn't have no relations, no nothing. She can't be alone. It's called yichud. Can't be alone with another man. Even a single woman is not allowed to have yichud. Later on, they made a gzera that a single woman should not be alone with a man because maybe he'll violate her. Maybe they'll seduce her. Right? Temptation, right? We have to make fences. The rabbis understood you have to make a fence. But the Torah itself, according to some opinions, it's the Torah law when the Sefer Chinuch says, it seems like probably the Rambam's opinion, that it would seem, based on the Rambam, that even it would be a Torah prohibition for a married woman to be alone with another man with enough time that something could have happened in the room, as it says, and that's based on the way the Rambam in the mitzvah, when the Torah says lo sikruvu legalot erva, the Torah says don't get close to reveal a nakedness of let's say an idah of a woman that's forbidden to you. So the Rambam understands that the Torah actually is prohibiting the actual getting close, kissing, hugging, being affectionate in a physical fashion, even without the actual being intimate with the woman. Maimonides holds that's a biblical prohibition. Nachmanides holds it's a rabbinic prohibition if they're not intimate, but they're being physical. But whether it's biblical or rabbinic, it's both, everybody agrees it's forbidden. Now, in that mitzvah of Losikavu Galas Erva, the Sefer Chinuch, I think, brings down yichud, being alone, that's also getting close to reveal a nakedness. Good morning, Rabbi. But if a person is alone with the woman, there's one way if you get physical with the woman, kissing, hugging is a way of that's getting close, doing an act that's close that could lead to revealing the nakedness, being intimate, and being alone with enough time to sin is also it's also an act of getting close. The Sefer Chinuch seems to indicate that it will be a biblical prohibition for the married woman to be alone with a man for enough time. So what happened was she was alone with enough time to sin, and his husband warned her that really the husband doesn't need to warn her, don't be alone with the man. The Torah already says don't do it. Don't be alone. But she, according to Sefer Chinuch, but he warned her, don't be alone. And she was alone, and we don't know what. She was alone with enough time to have sinned. Let's say she was in the room with him for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is enough time for the woman to have had relation with the man. And that could be even less, even less most probably is enough. And how long does it take for a person to, from beginning to start, to have relations? However long that takes, that would be the amount of time that would be that would be the violation. Morning, Nathan. And the Torah says when we're not sure, then we don't know what happened in that room, right? The only thing we know is that she violated the warning of the husband. So the Torah has a whole procedure called the waters of the sotah. She drinks this whole thing. We write certain psukim, we have certain water, put the whole thing. But until she drinks from the water, until we verify what happened, she's forbidden to her husband. We say so. It's a safek tuma. It's a safek. It's a question whether she was intimate with this man or not. But we say we consider it as if she was intimate, meaning we say she's forbidden to her husband. A lady, a married woman, who has relations with someone else, with someone not her husband, the marriage is over. She's forbidden to her husband. There's no apologizing and saying, okay, let's go back together. Morning, David. The marriage is over. So here it's a safek if she's forbidden to her husband or not. And we say safek tuma, b'rshut hayachid. Since it took place in private, it was in private area, secluded. She's tamei. She is considered contaminated. So therefore, being that's the case, so this rabbi holds, Rabbi Yossi says, if this question happened whether the truma was when this urine, whether it was a person's urine or an animal's urine, it might be a person's urine, and it might be from a zav, and it might have, if it's a safek, if it might have touched the truma, will be strict in Rishus HaYachid. If it happened in Rishus HaYachid, the Chachamim say like this: they have a middle ground. Rishus HaYachid, if it's a question whether it touched it. So if the doubt happened in Rishut HaYachid, in private property, tolin, then the truma, we would say, we don't know if this urine, we don't know where it came from. We don't know if it's prohibited urine that will contaminate, and we don't know if it touched the truma or not. So if that question happened in private property, tolin, we'll suspend the truma. You don't have to burn it. You don't consider it as definitely contaminated, but you don't not allowed to eat it. You wait until it rots and then you dispose of it. But if the question happened in public property, we would say it's tahar. It's pure. You can eat it because safek tumah b'shita rabim. Question of doubtful contamination in public property is tahar. Ula, and Ula says, this is the bottom line we wanted to get to now. Elu shisha sveikot, these 6 sveikot, be'usha hiskimu. These, now we're turning the page, we are on 15b3. These 3 sveikot were in Usha. It happened in the place of Usha, in the city of Usha, is when they made these decrees. Usha was post the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash was destroyed already. So how could you tell me that we had the decree 80 years before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash regarding the Eretz Amim, about the clod of earth that came from Eretz Amim, from non-Jewish territory outside of Israel? But we see it happen much later. Ella, the Gemara says the following. This is going to be the conclusion of the Gemara. There were 3 stages regarding this, regarding the earth of Eretz Amim. Ella atu inu. The first Yossi, we had Yossi ben Yeezer and Yossi, maybe ben Yochanan. The first 2 Yossis, when they saw the situation of the Eretz Amim, they were concerned about the possible bone the size of a barley. Atu inu gusha litlot. They said if a clod of earth came to Eretz Yisrael from the Eretz Amim, from the non-Jewish lands, maybe, and it touched Truma, maybe there's a bone size of a barley from a dead body in here, and therefore we got to go ahead. If it comes in contact with the Truma, we're not going to be able to eat the Truma anymore, but we don't have to burn, we don't consider definitely Tamei that you have to burn it, Rather, you just suspend it. But va'avira v'lo klum. But if someone enters into the land of the non-Jewish world outside of Israel, and let's say you go into the land, you weren't walking on the ground, because if you walk on the ground, maybe you touch the bone. But you were just, let's say, in a wagon, and there was spaces on the bottom. Good morning, good to see you, Joe. And there were spaces on the bottom of the wagon. So now, regarding the body, that here we have the Kohen's in the house. So we're talking about truma. We're talking about contamination. Talking about the how do you like that? You're walking about truma. We're dealing with truma. The rabbis were very concerned that outside the land of Israel, they weren't so careful, in how they buried people, corpses. Not like Jewish people. We have they were very careful about cemeteries and marking the graves. They weren't so. They didn't have. They're not concerned about Kohanim. Kohanim are not a concern. They have no issue of Kohanim for the non-Jewish world, and therefore the rabbis, out of concern, and what happens is over time, with the plowing, they could have plowed up pieces of the body, pieces of the corpse. So, as you find today, in Manhattan, certain places they find when they're digging, they find construction areas, pieces of some say it's from slaves, some there's all different types of Indians, right? Whatever. They weren't careful of where they buried them, how they were buried in separate places. And if I told you, in the 1600s, there's the first Spanish Portuguese cemetery on the Lower East Side, right over there. They're very careful. Atu enu, the first time the rabbis said, we're not, for a body to contaminate by being an ohel over the body, you need a certain amount of bone of the dead, of the corpse. So therefore, the rabbis in the beginning, if you just came over the area, you were in the area, in the airspace of the Eretz Amim, the non-Jewish world, they did not make any gezerah. They did not, if truma, you were carrying truma with you into Egypt, they did not make any concern, any restriction, any limitation on that truma if you were just in the airspace. However, but the later rabbis, the rabbis of 80 years before the destruction of the Second Temple, they said, we're going to be strict about the airspace as well. And we're going to say, now, how far are we going to go? We're going to go and we're going to say it's suspended. We're going to suspend truma that was in the airspace of the Eretz Amim, came into Egypt. We're going to suspend that truma because maybe it came over a dead body, and therefore you can't eat that truma. Joe will not be able to eat the truma, but you'll be able to go ahead and but you don't have to burn the truma. We don't consider that truma definitely contaminated. Not allowed to burn. Yeah, yes, thank you. Not allowed to burn the truma. You're not required, right? You're not allowed. V'atu, and then came v'atu b'usha. Then later on, when the rabbis came to Usha, gozur agusha lisrov, they went ahead and they added, and they said that if you actually walked in the land of the non-Jewish community, or you actually have a clod of earth that was brought to Israel from the non-Jewish world, a piece of the ground, and it came in contact with truma, we say that maybe there was a bone the size of barley in there, and we're not only going to suspend the truma, we're going to consider it definite, treat it as if it was definitely contaminated, and you would have to burn the truma that came in contact with that. You have to have you have to have the ashes of the paraduma, just like going to a cemetery. That's how far they went. The guy goes to a cemetery, you have to go ahead and if the guy person comes in contact with a dead body, cemetery, you're all over a cemetery, you have to go ahead and sprinkle the ashes of the paraduma on the third day and the seventh day, the whole process chukat that we just read about recently. So too, in this case, if you walk in the land of Egypt, we'll have to.
not even touch the land if we're not going in until the bar of the month.
Exactly.
So that means the rules more lenient, no more strict.
No,
More
no,
spending, more strict, you know.
uh, right. So yeah. So now, right. So now, but now, so regarding, so there's one point. So regarding the actually coming into the land or a piece of earth from the land that was brought to Israel, then they added that they have to burn the truma. However, avira kidekoi koi. But just going to the airspace of America, of Egypt, and having that, they did not say to burn it. Let's say if you still talud, still suspended. If you come in a wagon, you drive from Israel to Egypt, you're still right. The truma will be, but you're in a wagon, but you didn't touch the ground. You're just in the wagon the whole time, and there's little spaces on the bottom of the wagon that the morning, Mr. Haber, that you were exposed to the ground, but I mean, you didn't have something that's separated completely between the, if you have this area dead body, if there's something, if you have some sort of something that could cap the tumah from going higher, but there was spaces on the bottom of the wagon, there was nothing capping it. Therefore, they said you will go ahead and we'll suspend the truma if you were directly over that area. Now we're getting back to glassware. We said we know if we buy a glass cups, glass, you want to go ahead and use to drink, you buy a glass cup or a glass dish that you use for food, you have to dip it in mikveh, right? That's a rabbinic law, meaning a metal utensil would be a biblical law according to many opinions. Dipping metal utensils in mikveh when you buy something from a Gentile, to dip it in the mikveh, and before you dip it, you say a bracha. Many people I think, are very confused about glass, because many people, let's say, in the Sephardi community, they use glass for meat and dairy, so they think they don't have to dip it in the mikveh. There's some people that make a mistake. You don't have to dip it, but they have to dip it in the mikveh. It's a rabbinic law to dip it in the mikveh, which we should educate the people about. And here the Gemara says is that they instituted, we said earlier that there was an institution of kli zechuchit, that glass has the ability to become tameh. The Torah does not list glass as something that can become tameh. I mean, if a dead body touches glass, according to Torah law, it's not something that will become contaminated. However, the Rabbanan instituted a rabbinic law on glass, that glass receives contamination. The Gemara wants to understand, when the rabbi, why did the rabbis see to it to create a contamination on glass? So the Gemara says, where does glass come from? Glass comes from sand. They make glass from sand. And earthenware, Joe, very nice having you. Yeah, very good. Earthenware, and also comes from the earth. So we know an earthenware utensil does receive contamination, klicheres. And we're concerned that maybe people will make a mistake. If you say that the glass does not receive contamination, you will think that earthenware, you'll say it's like they're all the same thing. And you will say you will not treat earthenware as contaminated when it becomes contaminated, and earthenware does become contaminated on the Torah level. So therefore, the rabbis placed the gzera on glass. That's what the first thing the Gemara says. Shlokish says. It comes from the sand. They treated it like earthenware, and therefore they said you have to go ahead and become contaminated. Elamat, the Gemara says, if that's the case, if you treat it like earthenware does not have the ability to go into the mikveh. If earthenware became contaminated, The Torah, you have to break it. If you break the earthenware, then it's no longer the utensil. That will make it shviratan zui taratan. The breaking will make it tahar. So why is it the Gemara is questioning now? It seems that glass does have tahara b'mikvah. That's what the Gemara is going to ask. There is a way to, if you make the glass like earthenware, it should also not have the ability to become purified in mikvah. And we'll see what the Gemara will answer on Monday. Wishing everyone a beautiful Shabbat. Thank you all for joining. Manuel, have a great day. Hopefully see you soon.